The nagging wife that ruins her marriage, mounting her frustration on her jobless husband. Chidi is cleaning the floor while Alicia asks him to wash the clothes, insulting her husband. She also complains as she steps outside that the car needs washing and instructs him to open the gate. Chidi feels so humiliated. His friend Brian calls to escort him to pick his fiancée up at the airport. He consoles him as he vents about being treated poorly by his wife. Chidi declines, citing his busy schedule, and ends the call. Meanwhile, at Brian's house, a girl overhears him talking about his girlfriend on the phone and assumes he's cheating. This leads to an argument and she storms out. On their way to pick up Brian's girlfriend from the airport, he expresses excitement about her arrival. Upon her arrival, he warmly welcomes her, promising to marry her soon. Back at Chidi's house, he continues making follow-up calls to companies where he submitted his CV, but he receives no positive feedback. He feels increasingly frustrated by the lack of progress. Brian and his girlfriend, Mirabel, are enjoying their meal. He praises her for her good cooking, then Brian suggests getting a date for their traditional wedding ceremony. They share a moment of excitement as they discussed their future plans. Meanwhile, Chidi is in the kitchen preparing food when he hears a knock at the door. He welcomes Brian inside and they engage in a conversation about Chidi's cooking skills. However, their discussion is interrupted when Alicia returns home, visibly upset and angry. Alicia directs her frustration towards Chidi, humiliating him in front of their guests. She complains about the faulty cars and the mounting bills, ignoring Chidi's attempts to ease the tension. Despite Chidi's efforts to signal her, Alicia continues to vent her frustrations. Feeling embarrassed by Alicia's behavior, Brian and Mirabel attempt to excuse themselves. However, Alicia's anger persists even after they leave, with her continuing to complain about household responsibilities and expressing her exhaustion. Chidi tries to address Alicia's disrespectful behavior towards him in front of their guests, but his efforts seem to fall on deaf ears. She warns him about making her feel so hot. Once again, Alicia storms out of the room, consumed by anger and bitterness. Brian and his fiancée, Mirabel, are outraged by Alicia's behavior, and Brian bitterly vents to Mirabel about how poorly Alicia treats Chidi. Brandy expresses her distrust, suggesting that Chidi might be cheating on Alicia. Despite Chidi's reassurances, Brandy refuses to believe him until he asks her to swear. They playfully chase each other upstairs until Brian insists that Mirabel swears, which she still refuses to before they share a kiss. Later that night, Alicia rejects Chidi's advances, citing exhaustion and frustration over their financial struggles. But Chidi argues on her inability to conceive. The next day, Chidi visits Alicia's mother at her shop, expressing his grievances about Alicia's disrespectful behavior and lack of intimacy. He confides in her about his frustrations with managing household chores despite his efforts. Chidi also reveals that Alicia hasn't been intimate with him for 3 months. Alicia's mother is shocked and promises to talk to her daughter, urging Chidi to be patient. When Alicia's mother attempts to reason with her, Alicia expresses her frustrations about shouldering their financial responsibilities alone since Chidi lost his job. She refuses to be intimate until Chidi takes more responsibilities for the household rather than focusing on having children. Alicia's mother encourages her to stand firm and demand accountability from her husband, advising her to be firm in her stance. Brian's fiancée is preparing to return to Abuja, reminding him of the wedding date set by her parents and urging him to marry her soon. She expresses frustration over their 3-month separation and emphasizes the importance of being together. Meanwhile, Chidi is in the room, troubled by thoughts of starting a family with his wife. However, she explains her reasons for not wanting to have a child at the moment, ending the conversation shortly to prepare for her journey. At home, Chidi requests to know why she had changed. He asked about making children. His wife tells him she's too busy and tired of the job and stress of bills to be pregnant, as she requests a ride to the airport. Chidi complains to Brian about his wife's refusal to have a child. His friend advises him to understand and give it time. That night, Brian talks to Mirabel about how much they both miss each other. The next day, Brian brings two women to their place, explaining they are bored and need someone to hang out with them. He tells Chidi that they are both his friends from Instagram and one of them is a pastor's child. He suggests that Chidi should have fun. Feeling uncomfortable with the idea of letting them wait for him in his house, Chidi laments his situation, but Brian promises to help him find a job and suggests attending a party together. Upon returning from work, Brian asks Chidi to assist him in entertaining his guests. After the party, they head out for some fun, with Brian suggesting they stay at the house for a night. Along the way, Brian insists on bringing the girls along despite Chidi's discomfort. When they arrive home, Brian insists that one of the girls stays in his room, much to Chidi's dismay, but Brian encourages him to have fun with her nonetheless. Brian advises him to consider cheating to alleviate the tension in his marriage. He sympathizes with Chidi's plight and shares his own feelings of loneliness. As Brian insists on having fun with the girl, he tries to make them comfortable. That night, Brian brings one of the girls to his room, urging him to make love to her as he tries to make her comfortable. Refers to her as a call girl, but she becomes upset. After some pleading, they make up. The next morning, Yvonne wakes up half naked in Chidi's bed, cuddling with him, while Brian is with Amma, Yvonne's sister, in the other room, engaging in sexual activity. Shortly after, Alicia returns home in a taxi and rings the doorbell. Chidi and Brian quickly wake the girls up and tries to hide them. Alicia enters and they both welcome her. Chidi rushes upstairs to tidy the room while Brian engages Alicia in a conversation. She requests food, and as she enters the kitchen, Chidi and Brian attempt to discreetly tell the ladies to prepare to leave after she finishes eating, but the ladies are not happy about it. As Alicia eats, she starts to nag about the bills, growing angrier. When she leaves, the girls plan their exit boldly, but they become angry and raise their voices. Finally, they leave, and Chidi vows never to do that again. However, a few minutes later, the girls return for their bracelet, with Yvonne complaining that she forgot it in Chidi's bedroom. As Chidi returns from dropping the girls off, Yvonne demands to get their bracelet immediately. Alicia asks him about the red nail that fell off, expressing her suspicion. Angered by his behavior of not taking care of the home, they both grow furious. Chidi declares he's done with the marriage as Alicia says the same. They both aired their minds of how tired they were. Chidi, in agony, seeks solace at Brian's house. Brian tries to console him. Chidi cries, feeling guilty of how he made them an expensive lifestyle. He urges as he decides to start hustling to provide for his home. Meanwhile, Brian complains to his girlfriend, Mirabel, about the situation. Mirabel rushes in with the lady he left for Mirabel to leave at the airport, causing Brian to explain and plead his case, but Mirabel is unmoved. As they are about to leave, Mirabel hears a lady's voice calling him baby. That confirms her claims as she breaks up with him completely. Alicia, deeply worried about her life. The next day, she's at the bar for a drink and waiting for her friend, and unexpectedly meets her ex-boyfriend, Harry, who explains he returned from Germany. They catch up and Alicia reveals she's no longer married to her husband. Harry sees this as a good opportunity, hinting at potential reconciliation. Finally, Chidi lands a job. Harry arrives at Alicia's house with loads of luggage, claiming to be his gym wares to her surprise. She welcomes him and prepares food for him, with him requesting for fresh meal. At Brian's house, Chidi informs him about his new job and suggests they go out to celebrate. They laugh and cheer each other. That night, however, when Harry tries to sleep with Alicia, she refuses, and Harry walks away angrily. The next day, she returns from work feeling so tired, but Harry insists she makes him dinner in spite of her tiredness, as he angrily lashes on her. One morning, Alicia is about to leave for work, but stupid Harry carries her car, claiming to go to the gym. As she tries to stop him, he angrily accuses her of sleeping with her boss, telling her to go back in and remove the makeup. Also, to tell her to open the gate for him. Alicia stares in complete dismay. That evening, he returns to see Alicia sitting on the bed. Harry asked her why she is sitting so comfortably when she hasn't washed his clothes. He starts to say mean things to her, questioning her home training. There, Alicia slaps him and he beats her mercilessly. At a dinner with Chidi, Alicia thanks him for coming. While she was talking, Chidi asks her about the scar on her face, but she runs out of the place covering her face, leaving Chidi confused. The next day, Chidi shows Brian his new car and celebrates with him. Chidi brings a bottle of wine as he congratulates him, toasting to more enjoyments. He also tells him about his new fully furnished house provided by the company. Meanwhile, Alicia is crying while Harry sleeps. She receives a call from her husband and meets him outside. After he tells her about his new job and the car belonging to him, he notices the scar on her face as she starts crying and begging. Alicia initially lies about it, but eventually admits that her ex-boyfriend, Harry, Chidi is surprised that she moved on so fast. Chidi leaves while Alicia is crying and begging after telling him all that has happened to him. As Alicia enters the room, she tells Harry to leave her house immediately. Instead, he mercilessly slaps her as she continues to tell him to leave. The following morning, Chidi returns with thugs, threatening Harry as he orders him to leave the house immediately. Alicia tries to apologize, but he leaves without saying a word. At Brian's house, Alicia visits and begs for forgiveness. She apologizes to him while expressing how hurt she feels. She promises not to treat him badly again, and they agree on a dinner date that evening. At dinner, Chidi meets up with Alicia and they both apologize to each other. They also plan their finances and lifestyle as they work on rebuilding their family.